So speak life, when the sun won't shine and you don't know why. Look into the eyes of the broken hearted, watch them come alive as soon as you speak hope, you speak love, you speak life.
Well, a very hearty welcome to you. You have happened upon a brand new show. This happens every week at this very time. It's called Dealing with Life. If you've had issues that worry you or you're having them now, I hope this time we have together is inspiring. I totally trust that it will be. We feature guests each week who have faced struggles and challenges and have found victory and, most importantly, found faith through this roller coaster we call life. We also have people on this show who have helped others in their times of struggle. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. This is a book about life, trust, and worry through the eyes of a dog. Sitting very close to me this week, I've been so excited about this all week long, is Gary Harmon. Gary is a high school teacher in the Knoxville Juvenile Center. He's also a speaker on the subject of misunderstanding disabilities, and also the author of the book, My Daddy Takes His Legs Off, a true story book for children.
That's
Gary,
correct.
nice to have you.
Thanks, Tom. I'm glad to be here.
You are such an inspiration to me. I've known you for about a year.
Right.
And introduced through a mutual friend. And from the moment I met you, you were inspiring. You didn't have to say anything. You just look inspired. No, Gary's a wonderful person. Tell us a little bit about Gary Harmon.
Gary Harmon. Okay, I was born, no, I'm just kidding. I'm from Tennessee originally. I grew up in Clarksville, Tennessee, and I was born with a physical disability.
Okay.
My condition is something called amniotic band syndrome.
Gotcha.
And what happens is as the baby develops in mommy, it develops in the amniotic sac. And the amniotic sac has two layers, an exterior layer and an interior layer. And with amniotic band syndrome, for reasons nobody seems to know, sometimes the interior sac shreds.
Oh, okay.
And it actually develops into strips. And I, as a baby, got wrapped up in those strips, and it limited the growth of some of my limbs and some other parts of my body. I have a left hand with only a thumb and a pinky. I have no right hand, and I have my legs, but I do not have feet.
Okay.
They also constricted around my face some. I don't know, I have all my facial muscles, and for reasons we never understood, one of my lungs collapsed at birth, so I breathe a little heavily. So
Okay. So at birth,
yes.
tell me a little bit about that story.
Okay, my mother I'm sorry, she passed this past year.
Okay.
My mother was one of these mountain of a Southern woman. She was made out of earth and soil and rock, and was tough as nails.
Love it.
And my mother, when told that I looked like this, and she didn't know until afterward, there were no ways of knowing what the baby looked like beforehand, she said, "He's my baby, bring him to me." She was fine with that. She didn't know how to raise a child that looked like this, but she knew she'd figure it out. My father, on the other hand, was very disappointed. My dad was a Marine drill instructor, and he considered me as broken and told her so. And she assured him that if he'd hang around and just do what he needed to do, they'd find a way to make this work. And he did stick around. So it started off a little rocky.
A little rocky.
A little, yeah.
A little challenging right from the
Right.
word go. So you made it through high school. Tell us just a short bit about that.
Okay. I went to the local school there. It was a great school. I had a lot of really wonderful teachers who were very supportive of me, and they learned quickly that I had a strange sense of humor, but I was fairly smart, and they seemed to like that. Until I got to be a smart aleck, and that came in high school.
Right.
But but I had great teachers. They were very, very good to me. They challenged me and they pushed me, and I enjoyed it. I even had the opportunity to be student body president at the end of high school. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
I even got the traditional blonde girlfriend. It was a good experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So now, just from the outside, I know you better, but
Okay.
from the outside, I know many people would take one look at Gary and say, "Wow, tough life." But I tell you, you smile and laugh more than anybody I know.
The only real hardship of my whole life is I can't eat pecans. And my grandmother used to make these beautiful looking pecan pies. And you can tell by looking at me that I also like sweets. So I suffered when my grandmother made pecan pies. Other than that, my life's been pretty good.
Wow. So that's the tough part.
Yeah, it was a tough part.
Okay. I won't try to
No,
give
there
you
were
the-
other tough parts, but that was just jokingly. I mean, I've had a blessed life, and I'm very proud of it.
That's awesome.
So.
That's awesome. You teach at the Knoxville Juvenile Center as a
Right.
high school teacher.
The Richard L. Bean Juvenile Servicing
Tell us
Center.
just a touch about that.
Well, it's we have kids there from 11 to 17, and they have been charged with a crime, or they don't call it a crime if you're a child. It's a delinquency.
Okay.
I don't deal with the legal part, so I forget that. But they come in, and we house them until the courts have decided where they're going to go, and then they go to some other place. And we provide a school for them, and I teach English and U.S. history. And I have that range of kids all in my room, various crimes, various backgrounds, and I try to assure them that none of that is my concern. My concern is they learn something in my classroom.
You have a guard with you.
A couple usually, yes.
Right. Okay. And
Right.
that alone sounds tremendously challenging.
It is. They're slower learners than the kids. I'm just joking, but sometimes it's true.
Right. Right. But I mean, you've got to break through. You've got to motivate in ways that some high school teachers don't dream of. But then again, we're talking to Gary Harmon here.
Now, to speak on behalf of my colleagues, they all have these kids before I do.
Okay.
So, yes, they've all done it, and they do it as well as I do. There's no secret to what I do. They actually have less support than I do, and they still manage to do their best for the kids. So, what I'm doing is certainly not miraculous. These ladies and gentlemen who teach them in high schools don't have guards in the room. If a kid gets out of hand or disobeys, I can have him locked up if I feel that's appropriate.
I'd say there's a few teachers around who would enjoy that.
I
privilege,
believe
right?
they would line up for that opportunity. Yes.
Right. So, and then also, just a little bit about you. You have family.
I do, yes.
You have a beautiful wife.
I do. I'm married to a woman named Catherine Harmon. We have 2 children. We have Kieran, who's 15 and knows a little bit about everything. Just ask him. And then I have Nathan, who is 11 going on 12, and he's my future scientist. And we can often be found in my front lawn looking at the moon.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
he is awesome. They're both awesome.
Now, one thing I know that challenged you and your wife early on that shook not only your marriage to the core, but also your faith to the core. Tell us a little bit about that.
In 1999, we were expecting our first child, and we knew it was a boy. We had named him Benjamin. We were very excited about this child. And one Saturday, back on a Friday, about 10 weeks before the baby was due, we went to the doctor's appointment my wife had. Everything checked out. They told her blood pressure was a little high, but she sat for a while and realized she was a teacher at the time. We all have high blood pressure.
Yeah.
But she sat down for a little while and relaxed, and they weren't worried. And we were sent home, and everything was fine. The next night, I took her to dinner and a movie, and when we got back, she felt uncomfortable. And so she told me she was going to sleep on the sofa, and maybe an hour or so later, she came in and told me that she was cramping and that she had called her doctor, and the doctor asked me to bring her to the hospital. So I did, and she was in the triage room for I don't know how long. I'm assuming the word triage means to torture the father, because it was a horrible, horrible night. And after they finally sent for me, I walked in, and the doctor said she was going to make this very quick, because that was the only way to make it merciful. And she told me that my child had died, and that she had I always forget this, but anyway, I'll come back to it later. But she the placenta had detached and the baby had died. And she told me that I needed to change into scrubs if I wanted to be with my wife when they delivered the baby.
Because they had to deliver.
Yes, because if the blood mingles, that could kill my wife. So she was crying, I was crying, the entire ground below us had fallen out. You really do feel that way when that happens.
Right.
And I finally got scrubbed in and went in to help her. And, of course, all I could do was sit there and cry. But
devastating.
It was. It was the hardest night of my life, yes.
Yeah. And so that once you kind of came terms to that, then you and your wife then had choices to make.
Yeah, we did. After my wife had been taken back to her room, I was in the room with a nurse and my child wrapped up in the blanket left on the tray. And I walked over to get him, and the nurse handed him to me.
Right.
And I didn't know anything about babies, and I certainly didn't know about babies that weren't alive. I wasn't sure what to do, and I was crying, and I asked the nurse what I should do, and she said she was going to ask me to do the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. And I thought, oh, my Lord, if it's harder than this, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah.
And she steadied me, and she said, you're going to take the baby across the hallway to your wife.
Oh, my word.
And I said, I can't do that. And she said, you have to. She's going to be asleep soon, and she needs to see the baby. So I did, and that's what I did.
Wow. So then it's a test of faith. It's a test of a marriage.
Yes. Yes. It was the darkest year of my life.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And I know you're a Christian.
I am.
I know
yes.
you're a strong believer. But
during that year, God and I learned to wrestle.
Yes.
As I was upset. I don't know all the stages, but anger is a big one with me.
Sure.
When you go through that.
Sure. And so when we come back in a moment, we're going to talk about your wrestling match with God. And obviously, you found yourself in victory through that. This is a show called Dealing with Life. And this is what it's all about. Life happens. And we are here on this earth to deal with it. And the great thing about a show like this is you find, you listener, find that other people are struggling and have struggled with things before, and they have still found God in them. So in a minute, we'll be back. Gary Harmon is with me. I'm Tom Baker. This is Dealing with Life.
You speak life. Oh, 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 oh. You speak life. I am holding on to you in the middle of the storm. I'm holding on. I am.
Hi, and welcome back. This is Dealing with Life, a new show intended to offer a little hope in this crazy roller coaster we call life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, a book about faith, worry, and life through the eyes of a dog. Mango, my dog, supposedly wrote it. I helped only a little. In the studio with me right now is Gary Harmon. And Gary is a teacher, a high school teacher at the Knoxville Juvenile Center, and also a writer and a speaker. And we'll get to some of that in a minute, but we want to unpack where we left off a minute ago. We talked about your first son, who you lost right before birth, and dealing with that. The point I want to get to is your faith. I mean, that is, if anything, a faith shaker. And you told us you got in a wrestling match with God. So I'm sure there was a little bit of pounding.
There was, yeah. There was a statue in the graveyard where my son's buried of Christ.
Okay.
And many times when I would go over and visit the grave, I would wander over and see the statue. And after a year of visiting my son, exactly on the birth date, I asked one of my pastors. He was an associate pastor, if he would meet us over there, my wife and I, and we wanted to talk to him a little bit at the site, and he agreed, and he met us there, and my wife's journey is her own, so I'll let her tell you what she talked about. But what I talked about was how I felt like that my anger had gotten in my way of my relationship with God.
Right.
And I was still very angry, not so much at God anymore, but just angry that I had lost a son. And it didn't matter if it was a son or not, but that I lost a child.
Right, understood.
Right. And he and I started walking around a little bit while we were talking, and we wandered over to the statue, and he asked me if I had ever been to the statue before.
Uh-huh.
And I said, yes, many times. And he said, do you find yourself talking to him while you're here? And I said, oh, yes, many times. And he laughed.
Yes, I have.
And he said, did you ever get so mad you blistered the statue? And I said, I'm surprised it's still standing. And he
Wow.
laughed and he said, and yet he is, isn't he? And I said, yes, he is. And he said, when you go to God with that anger and that hostility, and you just tell him what you think, do you know what that's called? And I stopped for a moment, and I looked at him and I said, are you really going to take this moment to accuse me of blasphemy? And he walked over, gave me a hug, and he said, no, it's not blasphemy, it's prayer.
Oh, my word.
He said, God never said we had to come to him happy. He never says that.
No, not once in the Bible.
He said, come to him all they want to, and he will listen, and he will hear you, and he will help you. He said, God didn't save your baby because that's just not the way things work. What he did was he was the first one that cried with you when he found out your child had died. And he said, that has to be enough. And over time it was.
Yeah.
You know, I really had to work through that. But of course, you know, babies die every day. It's one of those things people never tell you when you're an expectant parent.
Yeah.
But they, if I remember correctly, they told me that 4 babies had died that way that day, the day my son died.
Goodness.
It happens a lot. And you know, the infant's life is very fragile. And sometimes things go wrong, and something went wrong with my son.
Well, I mean, that's partly why they call it the miracle of birth.
Exactly.
It is a miracle.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, it doesn't always work.
And, you know, but the anger comes when you say, well, why didn't the miracle work for me? Well, you know, I didn't expect just God to perform a miracle. I wanted the doctors to rush in like they do on ER, and they revive the baby somehow. And that's beautiful TV, but it just isn't life.
Yeah.
And what I look back on now, almost 20 years later, is I look back on the time I did have with him. And the nurse gave me a very good suggestion. She told me to sit and spend the night telling him everything I wanted to tell him. As you know, I love to talk. So I talked to my son all night long. And I'm so grateful I had that moment. So I learned to look for God in moments like that and stop blaming him.
Yeah.
And start thanking him.
Well, I don't believe God intends and makes things
No.
happen. He doesn't say, hey, watch this. Let's see if he can handle this.
No.
I believe that he's an all-powerful God, and he understands and knows about it.
Right.
But the thing about God is he comes to meet you at the worst places.
Right.
And he shows himself really strong. And in those times is when you can see his strength.
Right.
It's hard to find,
Sure.
but it's there.
Right.
So from there, we also want to get to the book you wrote.
Right.
You have two beautiful children,
I do.
and when
They get that from their mother. So I'm not bragging.
so do mine. Thank goodness.
My 15-year-old now was the one that inspired the book.
Okay.
When he was about 6, I took the boys and my wife to a movie one summer day. And we were all wearing our shorts and our T-shirts, and we go into the movie theater. And as we're going in, there's a small group of people coming out, about college age, I would assume. And as they're walking past us, they stop, they look at me, and one of the young ladies says something about, "What in the world is that?" And they all laugh and walk on out.
Right. Now, for those who didn't hear at the beginning, tell us a little bit about your disabilities.
Okay. I was born as a result of amniotic band syndrome. I have no right hand. I have a thumb and a pinky on the left, and that's all, and no feet.
Okay. So they said, look at that.
Yeah, they saw the no hand, partial left hand, and the prosthetic legs, and didn't know what to make of me.
Right.
And so they giggle and go out of the building. Now, I'm a middle-aged man. I'm worried about two things. I've got to pay the mortgage and I like to eat. Other than that, I'm good. So I went to the concession stand and did what daddies were supposed to do, and we went to see the movie.
Okay.
And my wife explained to me, because she's more sensitive and intelligent than I am, that my older child was upset because of what they said. And I leaned over and said, "You want to step out and talk about it?" And proving to me that he was my child, he looked at me and said, "Did you get popcorn?" I did. "No, I'm good, thank you." So we had our snacks and we watched our movie. And when we got home, we did talk about it. And he sat with me in my chair and he was talking to me and he said, "Dan, nobody should say things like that to other people." And I said, "You're right, they shouldn't, but they do sometimes." And I said, "You just can't let it pull you down. You got to go on with your life. Don't worry about what they think."
Yeah.
And he said, "I wanted to tell them that that's my dad you're talking about, but I didn't think of it in time." And I said, "Well, it makes me very proud that you would feel that way. Thank you." And I said, "Don't worry about it. You're only 6. It's not your job to fix that kind of problem."
Yeah.
And that's when he messed up the rest of my life by looking up at me and he said, "Dad, whose job is it?"
Ouch.
And I heard the stars realign, you know? And there's this large cosmic arrow going, "Do you get it yet?"
Oh, my.
And I thought, wow, that's powerful. And I said, "I guess it should be mine." And I wrote the book. And it took me years.
Oh, certainly.
You know, as I started off, I mean, it's a children's book. It's not very long. I wrote it. I didn't like the first one, and I let it sit for a while. And about 4 years ago, I came back to it, tried again. This time, apparently, I got it.
Yeah,
So,
I'm a writer. I understand that.
Yeah.
Many versions ended up in the trash can.
Yeah.
And one or two got pulled out.
It was one of the hardest things my wife had to do is when she read the first one, she said, "This isn't it yet."
Right.
But I'm like, "But it's a
Yes.
great idea. It's a great idea. It's not a great book. I'm sorry."
It will be.
Yeah.
Through the power of
Well,
God.
no, she didn't say that, but
But the book is called "My Daddy Takes His Legs
that's
Off."
right. Talking about the prosthetics.
And
That's
really, the intent
Right.
is, of course, to help other people understand,
Right.
especially children.
right. I wanted to help families be able to discuss this, because if we take the position that we shouldn't ask people with disabilities about their disabilities, we shouldn't approach the subject, what we're telling the kids really is there's something bad there.
Yeah.
And let's not talk about it. I love kids. My whole life's been about kids. If they want to come and ask me about my hands, I'll talk to them about it. Now, I don't have a secret explanation that's going to help them, but I'll talk to them about it until they realize I'm really trying to be very nice, and I'm not going to claw them up or something.
Right. You're a human, just
Right.
like everyone else.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm doing a play with my church, and I was having kids try out yesterday, and there's a sweet little girl tried out, and she admitted to me a little later that she was a little nervous around me.
Right.
And I said, "Well, that's okay. Why?" And she said, "Well, you kind of scare me." And I laughed and I said, "Well, honey, that's because I'm the son of my dad." And we got a good laugh out of it. And I said,
And you move on.
I'll get nicer at time, and you'll forget what I look like. It's going to be okay. And they do. And it will be okay.
That's right.
And she's going to begin to play. We'll be fine.
That's awesome. We're talking with Gary Harmon. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, and we'll be back in mere moments.
I do believe I'm feeling stronger every day.
You have happened on a brand new show. This is called Dealing with Life. And yes, it happens every week at this time. Glad to have you. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, a book about faith, life, and worry through the eyes of a dog. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on my website, onedogsfaith.com. With me in the studio today is Gary Harmon. If you haven't been listening so far, Gary's a Knox County teacher at the Knoxville Juvenile Center, right? And also a speaker on disabilities, and also an author. So we're really, really glad to have you. A statement that you have made, I've heard you make before, and it really shook me in a good way. You said everybody has a disability. Now, you have disability.
I do.
In 8 seconds, describe your disability.
I was born as a result of amniotic band syndrome. I have no right hand. I have 2 fingers on my left and no feet.
Okay. All right. So a little challenging, but I've also heard you use the word challenge accepted.
Oh, yes.
And I know you well enough to know that you have accepted and you really take life head on, and it's so inspiring.
Well, I've never liked the term challenge, physically challenged, because it makes it sound like God has decided that you needed an extra challenge. I don't believe in that. But if you're going to use the term, then I want to turn it around to the positive and make it challenge accepted. Because if that were the way it worked, then I'm willing to take it head on.
Hear, 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 hear. So I've heard you use the term everybody
Right.
has a disability.
Has a disability.
Break that down.
Well, people want to divide us into 2 camps. People with disabilities, those with limb loss, blind, deafness, maybe intellectual disabilities, and then all you rest of you folk. And it just isn't true.
No.
I have never met a human being that didn't have some sort of disability.
Sure.
And my gorgeous wife wears glasses. Everybody has something. It's something. And if it's not physical, it may be intellectual, but we all have something.
Right.
And that's okay, because we're imperfect people living in an imperfect world. So what I try to do in my talking is to explain to audiences that we really aren't as different as they may think we are. Even though I have no hands and feet, I've lived a life that most anybody could live. I've done what most men my age have done. Have a family, have a job, do my thing every day, just like most guys do.
Right.
So my story is not extraordinary. What's extraordinary is that we see a divide between us, and there shouldn't be one.
Hear, hear. I so believe that. Now, we could look at it from 2 ends. God gives everybody different talents, different abilities, in order to pull off things that God would like them to do in their life. He has not a plan for everybody, but he has plans for everyone.
Right.
So in the same sense, we could group that into this. Everybody has talents, and also everybody has challenges.
Right.
That defines us. Well, actually, that doesn't define us. What defines us is how we react.
I think they motivate us.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine several years ago about how my friend thought I should do some speaking about people with disabilities and maybe do some writing about it. And I said, well, it just feels weird to think that that's going to be the focus of my life. That just doesn't feel right. And I thought about that and prayed about that for a very long time. And the answer I got?
What's that?
Well, why do you think you're like this? And why not? I mean, I've never looked at this as a negative. The fact that I have no hands and feet, I don't ever consider it. I don't have to. I do my life, I move on. It's not something I think about. Now, when my children were playing soccer, it was, because I wasn't one of those cool soccer dads who got out and kicked the ball all over the place
Right.
and was super athletic. But I know a lot of guys like me who aren't like that. You know, little chubby pencil pushers who aren't going to get out on the field to do that. And that's me. I'm sorry. And my kids told me when they were old enough to understand it, I kind of felt badly that I wasn't a coach dad. They told me I would have just gotten in the way and been annoying. So, okay, maybe not. But, you know, you just take what you can do and do it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed. So and so that you said you were a speaker.
I am. Yes.
You are currently a speaker. And,
I am.
And go to the, how does one get a hold of you? How does one book you?
I have a website, harmonspeaks.com. Harmonspeaks.com. Has a really great picture of me on the cover. I've never looked good until this photographer took a picture of me. Thank you. But anyway, you can get on that website, go to contact me, and you can fill out a little email form and send it to me, and I'll get back with you and we'll schedule something.
Great. Now, this show is called Dealing with Life.
Right.
Right? Okay. How do you deal with life?
One day at a time.
Right.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
One person you encounter at a time. You just can't do it all in one day. And I had to become an older man to get that. I'm sorry, when I was young, I thought I had to have it all mapped out. And God said, really? Good luck with that. And suddenly roadblocks jump up and things you didn't know were going to happen. And that's okay. That's part of the beautiful tapestry of our lives. But you just take it one day at a time, one challenge at a time. And one thing I've tried to learn to do, and I can't do this every day, but I try to look for something in the day that's either inspiring or makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's critical. If we're not happy, why are you walking on that same street every day? It's so important to enjoy yourself. And I don't mean to do that at the expense of everything else.
No.
But if you don't feel joy, you're not watching.
Well, joy and happiness are a choice.
Right, I agree.
And we can look at any given situation. Somebody can have the same exact problem.
Mm-hmm.
Two people standing side by side, and one can be smiling and one can be angry.
Right.
And yes, God, we talked about earlier, God allows us to be angry.
Sure.
But we do have to start looking up at some point.
Right.
The faster, the better. Sometimes not too fast.
Right.
But the choice of seeing it in a joyful, godly perspective, it's sometimes a hard choice.
Right.
Where is your joy?
Well, I find a lot of it with my children.
Yeah.
My younger son, Nathan, is autistic, and so he sees the world a little differently than most people do, I guess. And I decided when we first found out that I wasn't going to let that be the thing that scared me to death for the rest of my life. I decided to look for what I loved about it, and there's just so much to love. He loves science. I know very little about science, but by golly, I try to keep up best I can.
Yeah.
And he tells me he is going to someday work on a moon around Jupiter or Saturn. And I asked him if I could come out and visit him. And he said, "No, Dad, you never get that far away from a bathroom." So I love that kind of beautiful honesty. And I told him I thought by that time ships might have bathrooms, so it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, I love the way he sees the world. And we discovered something while working with him. He can't look me in the eye, especially if he thinks I'm upset. So I have a friend named Sherry who has been helping me try to figure out how to do this. Sherry Corden, she's a local teacher and an expert on autistic kids.
Okay.
And she told me not to make him look in my eye, come up with an alternative. So one night when he had done something I wanted to try to help him with, I called him over and I asked him to rest his head against my chest. And he did. I put my arms around his neck And I said, now, first of all, you need to know I have never truly been upset with you. And he said, never? And I said, no. I said, the second thing is, I just want to talk to you, and I thought this would be a nice way to talk. And he said, okay. So we stood there and talked for a little while. He was able to respond to what I said. And now, at least once or twice a week, we'll take a little time and he'll put his hand on my chest and we'll talk a minute. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a good thing or just a joyous thing. And Tom, how can you do that a couple times a week and not be happy?
Oh my goodness, yes.
I love it. I love it.
It's so,
I love
there's
it.
so much beauty around us, so many
Agreed.
blessings.
Agreed.
Golly. You're experiencing a new show called Dealing with Life. Our guest today is Gary Harmon, teacher, speaker, author, and I'm Tom Baker. We'll deal with more in just a few minutes.
Sometimes the only thing you learn is that life keeps moving on.
You're listening to a show called Dealing with Life. Very, very glad to have you. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, and with me in studio has been Gary Harmon. Great having you here. Gary's a Knox County teacher at the Knoxville Juvenile Detention Center. Is that right?
Servicing center. Yeah.
Servicing Center. Also an author and also a speaker. A very inspirational person. And one last thing I want to discuss with you. Because when you deal with life, you always first think of struggle. And struggle hits all of us at some certain times. The question I have for you in the short time we have left is, how do you have faith?
You know, that's a great question because it's sometimes difficult. I think for all of us, I think if we're honest, we have to be able to look back at a time where it might have been hard to have it.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes it difficult for me is I'm a teacher, I'm a book learner, I read a lot, I think a lot, and you cannot come to God through rational thought.
Right.
Now, I don't mean to say that God is an irrational thought. I don't mean that at all.
It's just things
But
that
if you're
don't
gonna
make
try
sense.
if you're going to try to explain it, good luck with ration. You know, God was on earth as a man and running the universe. Yes, God can do that. Because I believe he can do that. I can't tell you what he did every day. I don't know the mechanics of it.
Well, we
But
don't
I
have
do-
to.
Right, exactly. I think I've learned this through my sons as much as any other way because they teach me things like the sun is in our solar system and it warms us and gives us life, and they can ask me and do often, how does it work? Well, Tom, I like to think I'm a smart guy, but I don't know.
One big question
It's
mark.
got something to do with some kind of fusion, vision,
Yeah.
blowing up stuff. I don't know. I can't explain it. But you know what I do have? I have the faith that every morning I wake up, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
And that's all I need. I don't need to know how the sun works. I don't know how much of space works. I don't know the intricacies of a lot of things. My family seemed to love me. I have no idea why. I'm a large, smelly old man. Why they would want me around, I have no idea. But you can't rationalize everything. What you learn to do, I think, is to take things on faith. How do I know there's a God in the universe? Because every single step I've taken, he's been right there with me.
Yeah.
And I feel it in my heart. I know it in my heart. I don't have to show him to you because I know he's there. And even in my darkest hours when I was crying and doubting and angry, he was there. I couldn't see it at the moment because I was hurting too much.
Sure.
But I knew he was there. I knew he was there. And I have faith now that he's there. And I love him, and I'm grateful for what all he's done in my life. And when people ask me, well, don't you feel a little upset that he made you this way? No, I don't at all. I'm grateful for the opportunities he helped me see because I'm this way. And I'm grateful for all that. And I wanted to come on your radio show today, Tom, because I owe God much more than I can ever pay, as we all do.
Don't we all? Yeah.
And I was hoping this would be one way that I can publicly say I'm grateful for what God does for me.
Inspiring. And
love it.
yes, God is just amazing. He's been there for us all through this time. Why won't he be there tomorrow? And
Right.
he will.
He will be.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
I don't know if I'll make it, but he will.
Yeah. This is a show called Dealing with Life. We're so glad you have been with us. We'll be back here next week. Our guest next week is a man named Dave Gordon. He is past president of the National Speaker Association and has a lot of things to say about faith and about life. This has been another episode of Dealing with Life. Thank you so much for your ears today. I know it's been inspiring to me. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. We'll talk again soon.
You speak